if you live in a masculine energy for a long period of time and you've been doing it every year in and out from childhood, you've been taught that you need to hustle, you need to just push, you just need to be all that everyone else isn't, and you need to fill the gaps for everybody. You teach yourself that it is okay to neglect yourself. And it becomes so built into your DNA that having to shift from masculine to feminine becomes incredibly difficult. Hey fam, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you have an opportunity to join me today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Melise Justine. I am known as the Growth Coach, and I teach everything healing. And today I want to talk a little bit about something I am learning in my personal life that has a lot to do with feminism. I've had a conversation with a friend of mine who reminds me often that I may not think I'm a feminist, but I behave as though I am one, which is actually pretty hilarious to me because I'm not the kind of person who's going to be like, fighting out there for not necessarily women's right, but for women's right to be like men. Because for the past couple of years, I believe that I've been really, really fascinated with the idea of becoming feminine and becoming my more feminine self. But what I find very interesting is that many of us live in the masculine from the time we are brought up. Right, we grow up in homes where we have to fight for ourselves, where we have to be strong, where we have to kind of live like men do on the clock. Society teaches us that we need to get up at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time, and function as men do. The unfortunate part about that is it turns women into more masculine creatures, and for me, I've been masculine all my life and don't know how to be anything different. But a few years ago, a friend of mine who is a coach was teaching women how to become more of their feminine selves, and I was really intrigued by the idea because what came about was the fact that being in your feminine means you are softer, you embrace situations a lot calmer, you are the nurturing kind. And I mean, even as a mother and being masculine, you kind of learn how to nurture your children and nurture the people around you. But becoming feminine means that you don't tap into the problem solving sort of scenario when you are dealing with something. And unfortunately, society has made it so that women have to play masculine roles in many of the industries that we have today. If you work in a full-time job or if you own a business, you have to use of your masculine energy in order to make sure that that business is successful. But then in other times, femininity is a requirement, especially when it comes to relationships. So the thing that really stood out to me is right after I decided I wanted to become part of this feminine cause, I hooked up with one of my family members, and I have never met anybody in my life who is so feminine in all of her ways. Just the way that she shows up in all her exuberance and all the passion that she has is so addictive. And I see how other people are just drawn to her energy because of her feminine nature, and I knew that is exactly what I needed. I think there comes a point in your life when you've lived in masculine for a very long time, you do start to feel really weary. And for many of us, we don't understand as women why we're starting to feel really tired, exhausted, why this day-to-day 24-hour cycle is not necessarily functioning well for us. And then if you read Alisa Vitti's books, which I've mentioned in one of my earlier YouTube videos, you find that women's biology and biochemistry actually functions very different than men. Men recalibrate every 24 hours, whereas women, we work on a 4-week cycle, and we need to eat for that cycle and exercise for that cycle and move in that cycle and plan our lives around that cycle, because there are times in the cycle when we are high energy, when we have a lot more energy and time and sustenance in order to fulfill certain tasks. And then there's a point in our cycle where it's a rest period. And many of us don't take in that rest period, specifically because we have to have lives, we have to make an income, we have to go to a full-time job. But what I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks is how we incorporate both the masculine day-to-day that we are forced to because of the way society is built, and the feminine when it comes to our children and our relationships and the way that we interact with people. And I see, like, for instance, this family member that I mentioned, that there are ways that we can incorporate both without having the masculine overpower the feminine. Feminine is necessary. It's the only place where nurturing truly happens, because men are not built to nurture. We know this, right? They are built to be hunters and gatherers. That may have changed the way society has moved, with women coming more out into the forefront of business and the forefront of opportunity. But this is where I feel like masculinity took over, and where femininity is starting to disappear, which is becoming a problem. Is that when women's rights movement came up, and where women were protesting to wear pants and have the same job as a man and all that kind of stuff. That is all good and well, specifically because we need, an equilibrium when it comes to the sexes. Women need to be treated the same as men. However, we do not function, even if we try, we do not function the same as men do. And the unfortunate thing about feminism is what it did was it pushed women into such masculine roles that they completely lose any sense of what femininity looks like. Now, if you do the reading and the research on femininity, it's very vague, and unfortunately, many of us don't have one-on-one experience with people who actually live through their feminine selves, which makes it very difficult to incorporate in your own life. But what I wanted to say with regards to the idea of feminism is, whether it's great in all of its aspects, women don't fully experience their full selves by living in a masculine energy. You cannot. You are basically neglecting an entire section of who you are and how you're built to be more masculine. And that's why, and Elizabeth says it in her book, this is why women get sicker and sicker every year. We don't have the ability to tap into our feminine sides, where we are softer and more creative, and where the beauty of us comes out. And the one article that I read, which I love the word that they used, was that there is a exuberant energy that comes from the feminine, which people are generally just drawn to because of the way the personality comes across. And it's not necessarily a personality, it's just who women are. We're supposed to draw people in, make people feel safe, make them feel like they're at home when they come to our homes. And that has nothing to do with a clean house or a meal, right? Those are logistics. That has to do with who she is as a person, and that it comes from your feminine. So I wanted to touch on this topic because I am learning that if you are living in a masculine energy, first and foremost, as a woman, you're going to find yourself more tired more often. You're going to find yourself pushing to finish all the tasks all the time without giving yourself the time for self-care. And my definition of self-care is not makeup and nails and going to the spa. Self-care is actually doing the things that re-energize you, that help you recoup. That's for me, it's the reading, it's the taking solo vacations, and I'm not going on a solo vacation to sit with a Mai Tai on the side of the beach. I'm going with resource work, learning work, inner work stuff. The one of the trips that I went on, I sat with Tony Robbins for 6 hours, his 6 hours DVD, and I did that over the entire course of the week that I was there. And when I came back, I felt like I had so much energy to continue and to push through. Women require that time, and unfortunately, the way that our lives are built, it doesn't allow us that time to unplug and rest however we feel rest is necessary. For some women that is reading, for other women it is exercise, for other women it is engaging with other people. And also, because you have a 4-week cycle, you have different sections in your cycle where you feel more outgoing and more wanting to be around people, and then you have your rest where you retreat and withdraw. We need to pay attention to those things. Those things are vital. It's going to prevent us from getting ill. It's going to prevent us from having the nervous breakdowns. We see now more and more people are suicidal. If we really think about it, are they actually living in their true selves? Are they living within the space that were built and born to be? With regards to how feminism has impacted masculinity, I think the biggest thing that I'm starting to see is if you live in a masculine energy for a long period of time and you've been doing it every year in and out from childhood, you've been taught that you need to hustle, you need to just push, you just need to be all that everyone else isn't, and you need to fill the gaps for everybody. You teach yourself that it is okay to neglect yourself. And it becomes so built into your DNA that having to shift from masculine to feminine becomes incredibly difficult. I'm in my 30s, and it's the hardest thing to do because you don't even realize anymore that you are making spot on decisions, that you're making adjustments in the minute, because that's how men think to solve problems. You're solving problems continually, as opposed to taking in the environment, taking in the atmosphere, and being vulnerable, which is one of the hardest things to do. And I think feminine energy requires that. It requires that for connection. It requires that for to draw people in so that they can feel home, but also so that we can rest within ourselves, if that makes sense. The masculine energy has its benefits, for sure. I mean, if you look at the top women in the world, they have to do masculine things for majority of the time. But I watched how Oprah, for instance, has evolved over the years, and she was very driven, very, needed to make her name, needed to stand on that stage. And as the years have gone by, she's moved further and further into her feminine space. She's now gardening, showing more of her home, doing more of her interviews at home. She's softened up quite a bit. She still has hard-hitting topics and talks about amazing stuff, but she softened quite a bit, and you can tell that she shifted gently into her femininity. If she did the work in order to do that, probably, knowing Oprah, she most likely did. But for most of us, we don't allow ourselves to get there. And then when we're reaching our 50s and 60s, we are absolutely depleted and exhausted. And not understanding that we have given so much of ourselves to everyone around us except ourselves. And also recognizing that stepping away from the masculine is the only thing that's going to allow us to find our true selves. So in talking about finding our true selves, like I do in most of my videos, the only way to get to femininity, especially if your masculinity is based on trauma, which generally for most women it is to do the healing work. You can only fully understand your femininity when you do the healing work, and it's a lifetime journey. Like healing is a lifetime journey, discovering your feminine self and how that adjusts to the life that you love and the surroundings that you have and the people that you have to serve is a lifetime work. For some of us, it's accelerated. It's harder if it's accelerated. But if you're taking it one step at a time and understanding what you want your femininity to feel like, what you want to feel like in your body, how you want to move, how you want to associate with the people around you, that is really the beginning steps to understanding what femininity looks like for you as an individual. I really recommend reading Alisa Vitti's book. It really describes a lot of women's biochemistry and how biohacking has really messed with how we're supposed to function. This is why we have period issues, why we have women who are really struggling to fall pregnant. It's not necessarily because they were born that way. There's usually a biohacking system or a full-on masculinity system, something that's happening that's preventing them from actually fulfilling everything they want to do with their bodies. This is exactly why women get sicker and sicker every year, even though technology has gotten better and the healthcare system has gotten better. We really need to start looking at how we live individually and what it is where we want to get to. It doesn't help living in a masculine energy 24/7, making all the money in the world and then ending up sick at the end of the day. And that is my philosophy on it all. I want to be around for my grandbabies, although I'm not going to be the nanny grandma. But I want to be around for my grandbabies, and I really need to take into cognizance the fact that running myself towards my goals can happen in my feminine nature. It doesn't have to happen on that 24-hour cycle. I can function on my 4-week cycle, take rest days, take break days, really just be with myself, do some it's re-energizing of how can I say, my internal compass, all of that, and still achieve. And the mistake that we all make, and I think the belief that we all have, is if we aren't pushing 24 hours a day and getting up at 4 a.m. and going to bed at 8:30 every day as women, that we are never going to achieve. Women cannot achieve the same way men do by pushing the way that they do, because we will die earlier. There's no doubt about it. Men can function on a lot less sleep than women do. But if you think about the complexities of how our physiology is built, our brains are a lot more complex, our bodies are a lot more complex. We grow humans, for Pete's sake. We need to really pay attention to the details of all of those things, and how the nurturing is a prerequisite for achieving anything well. One of the things that I hear people talk a lot about is brain fog, and I suffer a lot from brain fog. But the reason why is because I don't give myself moments to unplug. I have to be running masculine 24/7. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the impact on masculinity on relationships. Now, coming from someone who used to be married before, what happens is you end up running the show and you don't even know that you're doing it. The Bible talks about God being the covering of man, man being the covering of the woman and of the wife, and if the wife doesn't have a covering, she needs to be a covering on her head. I didn't know the scripture existed, and I was telling someone the other day, it came up to me like 3 times, and what I realized was I was trying to be the head. I was trying to be the decision maker. I was trying to be on my toes 24/7. I still am that person. It's a very hard adjustment, but what it did was make me so exhausted that most of the time I didn't just want to unplug, I wanted to run away or disappear, because I wasn't feeling like myself. I wasn't feeling like all of who I needed to be in that time. But what it does for relationships and marriage in particular is you kind of take the man's role from him, and then he has nowhere to go. He doesn't know what to do with himself because you're playing his role for him. And because women are pretty efficient, we tend to take on the role and then kind of make it as excellent as we possibly can and perfect it. But essentially it castrates him. And people are counseling for marriage and relationships and stuff, I often ask counselors if they have these kind of conversations, because if the counselor is not able to pick up that the woman is living through her masculine, and not softening into what she needs to, he has no safety. He has no place to lay his burdens. He has no place where he feels safe to share how he feels about what's going on in his day or in his head. He has no place to rest. The way that the relationship is supposed to be built is where she's soft enough where he can come and rest, but where he leads enough to make decisions. And she embraces that and she holds space for that, but she doesn't run the show. A lot of the time what we've been taught is when women become more feminine that they are weaker. This is an internal system that is built in us. It becomes part of our belief systems, and this is why we run away from becoming more feminine, because we've been taught being feminine is weak. Our mothers have taught us this, right? The unfortunate part about that is the longer we think that it's weak, the less opportunity we get to experience the fruition and the full, the full experience of what femininity can look like and how it can feel. So that was just a little bit of information on how I think that feminism has impacted femininity and how it's made women more masculine. It's been a benefit, but at the same time it's having long-bearing consequences on health and how families are being reared. And if you ask me personally, I would say this is one of the top reasons why marriages don't survive. But that's my opinion. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope to see you guys next week. We're gonna have another hard-hitting topic. Let me know what you think about this. Share your comments, share the video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hit me up on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Love you.